My wife Sarah has the biggest heart of anyone I have ever known. For almost a year, she poured everything into planning my sister Diana's wedding. Every detail, every phone call, every late night hunched over her laptop. She did it all for free, out of love for my family. I never imagined the day would come when my own sister would send a text message that made me read it 3 times just to believe it was real. What happened next changed how I see family and gratitude forever. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. Trust me, you will want to stay until the end to see what happened when my sister finally saw what was left of her dream wedding without everything my wife had planned. I met Sarah 6 years ago at a charity event her company was hosting downtown. She was not the organizer on paper, just an employee who volunteered to help. But the moment I walked into that transformed ballroom, I knew someone special was behind it. The space had been an empty, cold convention hall just hours before. Sarah had turned it into something warm and inviting with simple decorations, thoughtful lighting, and small touches that made everyone feel welcome, all on a shoestring budget that would have made most event planners laugh. We started dating a few months later, and I quickly learned that her talent for bringing people together was not just a work skill. It was who she was. After we got married, Sarah became the unofficial event coordinator for my entire family. She planned my mother Gloria's 60th birthday party, organized my parents' 35th anniversary dinner, and even put together a surprise retirement gathering for my uncle. Every single time, people would come up to me afterward and say how lucky I was to have found her. And every single time, I knew they were right. My sister Diana got engaged to her boyfriend Brandon last spring. Brandon is a lawyer, quiet and steady, the kind of guy who thinks carefully before he speaks. He proposed at their favorite Italian restaurant with a ring he had been saving for over 2 years. Diana called everyone in the family that same night, her voice shaking with excitement. We were all thrilled for her. A few weeks later, we gathered at my parents' house for a celebration dinner. The conversation eventually turned to wedding planning, and Diana's excitement started to fade. She talked about how expensive everything was: the venues, the photographers, the flowers. Brandon nodded along, explaining that they had some savings, but not nearly enough for the kind of wedding Diana had always dreamed about. That is when Sarah spoke up. She offered to plan the entire wedding herself, completely free of charge. She explained that hiring a professional wedding planner would cost at least $15,000, maybe more, depending on the services. She wanted to save Diana and Brandon that money as a gift to the family. Diana burst into tears right there at the dinner table. She hugged Sarah so tight I thought she might never let go. She called Sarah the best sister-in-law anyone could ever ask for. My mother Gloria thanked Sarah over and over, saying how blessed we were to have her in the family. Even my father Richard, who rarely shows emotion, gave Sarah a warm smile and a nod of approval. I sat there watching my wife accept their gratitude with her usual humble grace, and I felt a wave of pride wash over me. I had no idea that this moment of generosity would eventually lead to one of the most painful experiences of our marriage. Sarah started working on the wedding immediately. She created detailed spreadsheets, tracking every expense, every vendor contact, every deadline. She spent her evenings after work researching venues, comparing prices, reading reviews. On weekends, she drove hundreds of miles to visit potential ceremony and reception locations, always looking for the best value without sacrificing quality. She found a beautiful small church about 45 minutes outside the city. It had stained glass windows, wooden pews worn smooth by generations of worshipers, and a rental fee that was half what the downtown churches charged. Diana loved it the moment she saw the photos. For flowers, Sarah contacted 7 different florists before finding one willing to work within the budget. She negotiated a 30% discount by agreeing to use seasonal blooms instead of exotic imports. She designed the wedding invitations herself on her computer, spending hours perfecting every font choice and decorative element to save on printing costs. Diana was deeply involved in those early months. She and Sarah would talk on the phone for hours, discussing color schemes and table arrangements and music selections. They went dress shopping together, and Sarah used a connection she had with a bridal boutique owner to get Diana a stunning gown at 40% off the original price. Diana cried again when she saw herself in the mirror wearing that dress. I watched Sarah work late into the night, sometimes until 1 or 2 in the morning. I worried about her exhausting herself, but she always brushed off my concerns. She told me this was her joy, her way of showing love to my family. She said it made her happy to use her skills for people she cared about. For those first several months, everything seemed perfect. Diana was grateful Sarah was fulfilled, and I was proud of both of them. I had no idea how quickly things were about to change. The shift happened gradually, so slowly at first, that I almost missed it. Around 4 months before the wedding, Diana stopped saying thank you when Sarah updated her on the planning progress. The excited phone calls became shorter, more businesslike. And then Diana started questioning every decision Sarah had already made. The first major conflict was about the reception venue. Sarah had booked a lovely restaurant with a private event space, elegant but affordable. Diana suddenly announced that she wanted to change it to a 5-star hotel downtown. Sarah gently explained that a venue like that would blow the entire budget on location alone, leaving nothing for food decorations or entertainment. Diana did not take it well. Her voice turned sharp, almost accusatory. She said this was the most important day of her life, and she refused to settle for less than she deserved. Brandon sat beside her during this conversation, saying nothing, just watching with worried eyes. Sarah worked her magic once again. She found a 4-star hotel with a recently renovated ballroom that was offering a promotional rate for off-peak dates. It was not the 5-star property Diana had demanded, but it was beautiful and within budget. Diana agreed to it, but her enthusiasm was gone. She acted like Sarah had failed her somehow. That was when Megan entered the picture. Megan had been Diana's best friend since college, and Diana chose her as the maid of honor. Megan worked in the high-end fashion industry and never missed an opportunity to mention it. She wore designer clothes, carried expensive handbags, and constantly compared everything to the luxurious events she attended through her job. Megan started showing up to planning meetings uninvited. She would scroll through her phone, showing Diana photos of celebrity weddings and society events. Why was Diana not having a live band like the daughter of some CEO Megan knew? Why were the centerpieces so simple compared to the ones at a Fashion Week after-party Megan had attended? Then Megan started questioning Sarah directly. She asked Diana loud enough for everyone to hear why she was trusting someone who was not even a professional wedding planner. She pointed out that Sarah had no credentials, no portfolio, no experience with high-end events. She suggested that maybe Diana was settling for amateur work because she was too polite to say no to family. I watched the doubt creep into Diana's eyes. She started second-guessing decisions that had already been finalized. She called Sarah at 11 o'clock at night, demanding explanations for choices made months ago. She wanted to know why Sarah had picked this photographer over that one, this caterer over another, this shade of blue over a slightly different shade. Sarah answered every question with patience and professionalism. She never lost her temper, never pointed out how unreasonable Diana was being. She just kept working, kept trying to make my sister happy. I heard those late-night phone calls. I saw the way Diana spoke to my wife, the dismissiveness in her tone. I wanted to say something to defend Sarah, but she asked me to stay out of it. She did not want to cause family drama. She believed she could smooth things over if she just worked a little harder, gave a little more. The demands kept escalating. Diana wanted the invitation design changed for the 4th time. She insisted on switching from white roses to imported peonies that cost 3 times as much. She decided she needed 100 additional guests, even though the venue could only hold 200 comfortably. Every time Sarah explained a limitation, Diana would snap back with the same accusation. "You are supposed to be the planner," she would say. "Figure it out. That is your job." Except it was not Sarah's job. She was not being paid. She was not under contract. She was doing all of this out of love, sacrificing her evenings, her weekends, her peace of mind. And Diana had somehow forgotten all of that. Sarah started losing sleep. I noticed the dark circles forming under her eyes, the way her appetite disappeared, the tension she carried in her shoulders. She lost weight she could not afford to lose. I begged her to step back, to tell Diana she could not continue under these conditions. But Sarah refused. She said we were too close to the finish line. She said she would not let the family down. 2 months before the wedding, Sarah organized a menu tasting at the hotel. She had negotiated with the catering manager to prepare 5 different menu options at a discounted rate so Diana could choose her favorites. Diana arrived with Megan and my mother Gloria. From the moment they sat down, the atmosphere felt wrong. Diana tasted each dish with a frown, pushing plates away after single bites. Megan made constant comparisons to other weddings she had attended, always unfavorably. Then Diana said it right there in front of the catering staff, in front of my mother, in front of everyone. She looked at Sarah and asked why she had chosen such a terrible restaurant. She said the food was disappointing and she expected better from someone who claimed to know what she was doing. Sarah's face went pale. She calmly explained that this was one of the best caterers in their price range, that the reviews were excellent, that many couples had been thrilled with the food at their weddings. But Diana just rolled her eyes and looked at Megan, who smirked in response. My mother said nothing. She sat there silently, not defending Sarah, not acknowledging the insult that had just been delivered to her daughter-in-law. That night, Sarah cried in our bathroom with the door closed. She thought I could not hear her, but I did. I sat on the other side of that door, my fists clenched, my heart breaking for the woman I loved. I had never been so angry at my own family. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. It started with bridesmaid dresses. Sarah had ordered 6 dresses in pale blue, exactly the color Diana had specified during their planning sessions months earlier. The dresses had been custom-fitted, paid for, with a deposit from our own savings, because Diana had maxed out her wedding budget. Then Megan decided that pale blue was boring. She convinced Diana that coral pink was the color of the season, that all the fashionable weddings were using warm tones instead of cool ones. Diana called Sarah and demanded that all 6 dresses be replaced. Sarah explained the situation as calmly as she could. The dresses were already made. They could not be returned. Ordering new dresses would cost an additional $2,000 and might not even arrive in time for the wedding. Diana exploded. She accused Sarah of being inflexible, unprofessional, incompetent. She said a real wedding planner would have anticipated changes and planned accordingly. Then she said something that cut deeper than anything before. She accused Sarah of deliberately cutting corners to pocket the savings for herself. It was a lie, a complete, baseless lie. Sarah had spent her own money on deposits to help Diana. She had never taken a single dollar. She had never even asked for reimbursement for the gas she used driving to venue visits or the supplies she bought for handmade decorations. I could not stay silent any longer. I called Diana myself and told her directly that she was being unfair to Sarah. I said my wife had given nearly a year of her life to this wedding and deserved respect, not accusations. Diana hung up on me without a word. 5 days before the wedding, Sarah and I were eating dinner at home. It had been a quiet meal, both of us tired from months of stress. Then Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. I watched her face as she read it. The color drained from her cheeks. Her hands started trembling. She handed me the phone without speaking. The message was from Diana. It said Sarah was no longer welcome at the wedding. It said she should not come. I read those words 3 times. I could not process what I was seeing. My own sister had just banned my wife from a wedding that my wife had spent a year planning. I called Diana immediately. She answered with an annoyed sigh, like I was bothering her with something trivial. I demanded to know what was going on. Diana said Megan had heard Sarah bad-mouthing her to one of the vendors. She said Sarah had been complaining about Diana being difficult and ungrateful. She said she could not have someone with that kind of attitude at her special day. I asked for proof. What vendor? What exactly had Sarah supposedly said? When did this conversation happen? Diana had no answers. She just kept repeating that Megan had heard it, that Megan would not lie about something like this. But I knew Sarah. I knew she had defended Diana to everyone, had praised her taste and her vision, even when Diana treated her terribly. Sarah would never speak badly about anyone, least of all to wedding vendors who relied on positive relationships with clients. I told Diana she was wrong. I told her Megan was lying. I told her she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Diana did not care. She said the decision was final. She said Megan would handle everything from now on. She said she did not need Sarah anymore. I asked who was going to manage all the vendor relationships, the timeline, the logistics with only 5 days left. Diana said Megan had connections in the event industry. Megan would figure it out. I laughed, though nothing was funny. I told Diana good luck and ended the call. Sarah sat motionless on the couch, tears streaming down her face. She had given everything. Nearly a year of her life, hundreds of hours of work, money from our own savings. And this was how she was repaid. Thrown away like she meant nothing. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, rage and hurt churning inside me. By morning, I had made a decision. I sat down with Sarah and told her my plan. We were going to take back everything she had contributed to this wedding. Every deposit she had made under her name, every item she had created with her own hands, every vendor relationship she had built. Sarah hesitated. She was worried about tearing the family apart, about making things worse. But I could see in her eyes that the betrayal had broken something inside her. She had given so much love and received cruelty in return. Finally, she agreed. She had nothing left to lose. I spent the next 2 days making phone calls. The florist had a contract signed by Sarah, not Diana. Canceled deposit refunded. The photographer had been booked using Sarah's credit card as a guarantee. Canceled, no penalties since Sarah was the account holder. The DJ had dealt exclusively with Sarah for months. Canceled, deposit returned. The wedding cake was being made by a friend of Sarah's who owned a small bakery. One phone call, and that was done. She was not going to make a cake for people who had treated her friend so badly. Sarah and I drove to the storage unit where she had been keeping all the handmade decorations. Table centerpieces she had assembled by hand. Welcome signs she had painted herself. Favor boxes she had spent weeks putting together. We loaded everything into our truck and brought it home. The invitation design files were on Sarah's computer. Diana had been using a shared folder to access the final versions. Sarah deleted the folder. The guest spreadsheet with all the contact information and seating arrangements had been created and maintained by Sarah. She removed Diana's access. Within 48 hours, we had reclaimed everything that belonged to us. 3 days before the wedding, Diana started making calls. She called the florist to confirm her flower order and learned it had been canceled. She called the photographer, the DJ, the bakery. All canceled. All gone. Her call to me came in the late afternoon. She was screaming before I even finished saying hello. She called me a traitor, a monster, someone who was destroying her perfect day out of spite. I waited for her to finish. Then I spoke calmly and clearly. I told her that Sarah had made those arrangements, Sarah had signed those contracts, Sarah had paid those deposits. When Diana kicked Sarah out, she kicked out everything Sarah had built. Diana started crying, saying I was ruining the most important day of her life. I replied that she had ruined it herself the moment she threw away the one person who had worked tirelessly for free to make her dreams come true. She hung up on me again. Within the hour, my mother Gloria called. She said I was tearing the family apart. She said I was being petty and vindictive. She said I should apologize to Diana and help fix the situation. I asked my mother one simple question. Had she ever even once stood up for Sarah when Diana insulted her? Had she ever told Diana that she was being ungrateful or unfair? The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. I told my mother that Sarah and I would not be attending the wedding. I said I hoped Megan was as talented as Diana believed because she was going to need a miracle to pull this off. Then I ended the call. The wedding day arrived, and Sarah and I stayed home. I heard what happened from a cousin who attended. The ceremony at the church went fine, but the reception was a disaster. The hotel ballroom felt empty without the decorations Sarah had planned. There were no elaborate flower arrangements, just a few basic bouquets someone had picked up at the last minute. No professional photographer documented the event, just guests taking pictures on their phones. The music came from a small Bluetooth speaker because Megan had not been able to book a DJ on 3 days' notice. The wedding cake was a simple sheet cake from a grocery store bakery, not the elegant 3-tier design Sarah had arranged. Guests whispered among themselves, confused about what had happened. Many of them knew Sarah had been planning the wedding for months. They could see something had gone terribly wrong. Diana tried to smile and pretend everything was fine, but the strain showed on her face. Her dream wedding had turned into something unrecognizable. All the magazine-worthy details she had envisioned were gone, replaced by rushed alternatives that highlighted just how much Sarah had truly done. After the reception ended, Diana stood alone in the half-empty ballroom. She looked around at the bare walls, the simple table settings, the absence of all the personal touches that would have made the day special. She pulled out her phone. My phone rang that evening. Diana's name appeared on the screen. I almost declined the call, but Sarah stopped me. She said we should hear what Diana had to say. Diana was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Between sobs, she apologized. She said she had been blind. She said Megan had been jealous of Sarah from the beginning, had been poisoning Diana's mind for months. Megan had wanted to plan the wedding herself, but Diana had chosen Sarah instead. Everything Megan said had been designed to drive a wedge between them. Diana admitted she had never verified Megan's accusations. She had never asked Sarah for her side of the story. She had just believed the worst about someone who had shown her nothing but kindness. She asked if there was any chance of forgiveness, any way to repair what she had broken. I looked at Sarah. The decision was not mine to make. Sarah took the phone from my hand. She told Diana that she heard her apology, and she appreciated it. But she said she needed time. Months of hurt could not be erased with one phone call. Maybe someday they could rebuild their relationship, but not today. Not yet. Diana thanked Sarah for even listening. Then she said goodbye. The weeks after the wedding were difficult. Sarah struggled with feelings of betrayal that went deeper than the wedding itself. She had genuinely loved my family. She had considered Diana a sister. Losing that bond left a wound that took time to heal. I stayed close to her through all of it. We took a weekend trip to a small cabin in the mountains away from phone calls and family drama. We hiked through quiet forests, cooked simple meals together, and talked about everything except weddings. Slowly, Sarah started to recover. The light came back into her eyes. She began laughing again, smiling again. She also started using her talents for people who genuinely appreciated them. Friends asked her to help with birthday parties and anniversary celebrations. They paid her fairly for her time and thanked her sincerely for her work. She realized that her value did not depend on my family's recognition. She was gifted generous and worthy of respect regardless of whether Diana acknowledged it. I learned something important from this experience too. Loving your family does not mean allowing them to treat you or your spouse poorly. There have to be boundaries. Kindness should never be taken for granted, and when it is sometimes the only way to teach that lesson is to walk away. Diana eventually learned the cost of ingratitude. Her perfect wedding became a cautionary tale, a reminder that the people who give the most are often the easiest to overlook until they are gone. My relationship with Diana has changed. We speak occasionally politely, but the closeness we once had is gone. I do not hate her. I have let go of the anger. But trust once broken takes years to rebuild. Sarah and I are stronger now than we were before. We protect each other. We prioritize each other. We know that our little family of two is built on mutual respect and appreciation. Sometimes the only way people recognize your value is when you are no longer there to give it. That is not your fault. That is their lesson to learn. So let me ask you this. Have you ever given everything to someone who failed to appreciate it? Have you ever had to walk away to protect yourself? Share your story in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. And share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being part of this community. I hope you always find yourself surrounded by people who see your worth and treasure what you give. Take care of yourselves and never forget that your kindness is a gift that deserves to be honored.